Hi. Oh, it's so dark over here. Should I turn on the light? Is that better? Okay. Hi. Hi. I'm gonna eat my little snack while we wait for more people to join us. How are we all doing? We good? I just want to eat my snack. I shouldn't have started it yet. I got myself a snack, and then I was on live on TikTok, so I go live on TikTok before I do this, and then I didn't get to eat my snack. Hi. Great. I saw your comment, and I remember you from my TikTok. Hi, how are you doing? Oh, you said you're doing great. Sorry. I felt that. Someone said I'm honestly feeling kind of gay today. Yeah. That happens. Today we're reading part of chapter 8. I split it up into 2 parts, and today is the shorter of the 2 parts, so hopefully we have time to, or hopefully I have the energy to get through it all. I stayed in my clothes that I wore today. Clothes? So that I could, I don't know, do other people do this? You stay in your clothes all day so that you can be, focused on life? I do that. So hopefully I stay focused, because I'm in my real clothes and not my fake clothes. And I have my power snack. Oh, video. One more bite of my power snack and then we'll start. Okay. Power drink. Water for survival. Let's go. Okay. We're reading chapter 8, like I already said. I believe this is when Bill and Richie see Georgie or Pennywise. I believe that's what happens here. It's right after the dam. So yeah, it's Bill and Georgie, or Bill and Richie. Right after the dam. So they also see Officer Nell talking to them. Ooh, I don't want to do an Irish accent for Officer Nell. I won't do that. Okay. So, chapter 8. Georgie's room in the house on Nebolt Street. We're on page 322 in my copy, the paperback movie version. 1. Richard Tozier turns off the radio, which has been blaring out Madonna's Like a Virgin on WZON, a station which declares itself to be Bangor's AM stereo rocker. I'm already getting off track, but is that Stephen King's rock station? Because he has a rock station. I'll look that up later. Pulls over to the side of the road, shuts down the engine of the Mustang the Avis people rented him at Bangor International, and gets out. He hears the pull and release of his own breath in his ears. He has seen a sign which has caused the flesh of his back to break out in hard ridges of goose flesh. He walks to the front of the car and puts one hand on its hood. He hears the engine ticking softly to itself as it cools. He hears a jay scream briefly and then shut up. They're crickets, and as far as the soundtrack goes, that's it. He sees the sign, he passes it, and suddenly he is in Derry again. After 25 years, Richie Trash-Mouth Tozier has come home. He has burning agony suddenly needles into his eyes, breaking his thought cleanly off. He utters a strangled little shout and his hands fly up to his face. The only time he felt anything even remotely like this burning pain was when he got an eyelash caught under one of his contacts in college, and that was only in one eye. This terrible pain is in both. Before he can even reach halfway to his face, the pain is gone. He lowers his hands again slowly, thoughtfully, and looks down Route 7. He left the turnpike at the Etna Haven exit, wanting, for some reason he didn't understand, not to come in by the turnpike, which was still under construction in the Derry area, when he and his folks shook the dust of this weird little town from their heels and headed for the Midwest. No, the turnpike would have been quicker, but it would have been wrong. Sorry, my calendar has been squeaking against my wall, and I'm going to reposition it so it stops. My little Buggy Bear fell off. This is Buggy Bear. Hi, Buggy Bear. Okay, sorry. Had to be weird for a second. So we had driven along Route 9 through the sleeping nestle of buildings that was Haven Village, then turned off on Route 7. And as he went, the day grew steadily brighter. Now this sign. It was the same sort of sign which marked the borders of more than 600 Maine towns, but how this one had squeezed his heart. Penobscot County, Derry, Maine. Beyond that, an elk sign, a Rotary Club sign, and completing his trinity, a sign proclaiming the fact that Derry Lions roar for the United Fund. Past that one there is just Route 1 again, continuing on in a straight line between bulking banks of pine and spruce. In the silent light, as the day steadies itself, those trees look as dreamy as blue-gray cigarette smoke stacked on the novelist's air of a sealed room. Derry, he thinks. Derry, God help me. Derry. Stone the crows. Here he is on Route 7, 5 miles up. If time or tornado has not carried it away in the intervening years, it will be the Rulin Farms, where his mother bought all of their eggs and most of their vegetables. 2 miles beyond that, Route 7 became Witcham Road, and of course, Witcham Road eventually became Witcham Street. Can you give me hallelujah, world without end, amen? And somewhere along there between the Rulin Farm and the town he would drive past is the Bowers place, and then the Hanlon place. A mile or so after Hanlon's, he would see the first glitter of the Kenduskeag and the first spreading tangle of poison green, the lush lowlands that had been known for some reason as the Barrens. I really don't know if I can face all of them. I really don't know if I can face all that, Richie thinks. I mean, let's tell the truth here, folks. I just don't know if I can. The whole previous night has passed in a dream for him. As long as he continued traveling, moving forward, making miles, the dream went on. But now he has stopped, or rather the sign has stopped him, and he has awakened to a strange truth. The dream was the reality. Derry is the reality. It seems he just cannot stop remembering. He thinks the memories will eventually drive him mad, but now he bites down his lips and puts his hands together palm to palm, tight, as if to keep himself from flying apart. He feels that he will fly apart, and soon. There seems to be some mad part of him which only looks forward to what may be coming. Most of him only wonders how he's going to get through the next few days. And now his thoughts break off again. A deer is walking out into the road. He can hear the light thud of its spring-soft hoofs on the tar. Richie's breath stops in mid-exhale and slowly starts again. He looks dumbfounded, part of him thinking that he never saw anything like this on Rodeo Drive. No, he needed to come back home to see something like this. It's a doe. Doe, a deer, a female deer, a voice chants merrily in his head. She's come out of the woods on the right and passes in the middle of Route 7. Front legs on one side of the broken white line, rear legs on the other. Her dark eyes regard Rich Tozier mildly. He reads interest in those eyes, but no fear. He looks at her in wonder, thinking she's an omen or a portent or some sort of Madame Azonka, shit like that. And then, quite unexpectedly, a memory of Mr. Nell comes to him. What a start he had given them that day, busting in on them in the wake of Bill's story and Ben's story and Eddie's story. The whole bunch of them had gone damn near up to heaven. Now, looking at the deer, Rich draws in a deep breath and finds himself speaking in one of his voices. But for the first time in 25 years or more, it is the voice of the Irish cop, one he had incorporated into his repertoire after that memorable day. It comes rolling out of the morning silence like a great bowling ball. It is louder and bigger than Richie would ever have believed. Jesus Christ on a jumped-up chair, grip and crutch. What's a nice girl like you doing out in the wilderness, dear? Jesus Christ! You be getting on home before I decide to tell father of staggers on ye. I didn't do the accent. But it's written like Jesus Christ. So I said that. Before the echoes have died away, before the first shocked jay can begin scolding him for his scarlage, the doe flicks her tail at him like a truce flag and disappears into the smoky-looking firs on the left side of the road, leaving only a small pile of steaming pellets behind to show that, even at 37, Richie Tozier is still capable of getting off a good one from time to time. Richie begins to laugh. He's only chuckling at first, and then his own ludicrousness strikes him. Standing here in the dawnlight of a Maine morning, 3,400 miles from home, shouting at a deer in the accents of an Irish cop. The chuckles become a string of giggles. The giggles become... I don't know how to pronounce this word. Guffaws. Guffaws. Oh, that word. Become howls, and he is finally reduced to holding on to his teeth. He's finally reduced holding on to his car while tears roll down his face, and he wonders dimly if he's going to wet his pants or what. Every time he starts to get control of himself, his eyes fix on that little clump of pellets, and he goes off into fresh gales. Snorting and snickering, he is at last able to get back to the driver's seat and restart the Mustang's engine. On Orinoco chemical fertilizer truck. An Orinoco chemical fertilizer truck snores by in a blast of wind. After it passes him, Rich pulls out and heads for Derry again. He feels better now, in control. Maybe it's just that he's moving again, making miles, and the dream has reasserted itself. He starts thinking about Mr. Nell again. Mr. Nell and that day by the dam. Mr. Nell had asked them who thought this little trick up. He can see the five of them looking uneasily at each other, remembers how Ben finally stepped forward, cheeks pale and eyes downcast, face trembling all over as he fought grimly to keep from blabbering. Poor kid probably thought he was going to get 5 to 10 in Shawshank for backflooding drains on Witcham Street. Rich thinks now, but he had owned up to it just the same, and by doing that he had forced the rest of them to come forward and back him up. It was either that or consider themselves bad guys, cowards, all the things their TV heroes were not, that had welded them together for better or for worse, had apparently welded them together for the last 27 years. Sometimes events were dominoes. The first knocks over the second knocks over the third, and there you are. When Richie wonders, did it become too late to turn back? When he and Stan showed up and pitched in, helping to build the dam? When Bill told them how the school picture of his brother had turned its head and winked? Maybe. But to Rich Tozier, it seems that the dominoes really began to fall when Ben Hanscom stepped forward and said, I showed them, too, how to do it. It's my fault. Mr. Nell simply stood there looking at him, lips pressed together, hands on his creaking black leather belt. He looked from Ben to the spreading pool behind the dam, and then back to Ben again, his face that of a man who couldn't believe what he was seeing. He was a burly Irishman, his hair premature white, combed back in neat waves beneath his peaked blue cap. His eyes were bright blue, his nose bright red. There were small nests of burst caterpillars on his cheeks. He was a man no more than medium height, but to the 5 boys arrayed before him, he looked at least 8 feet tall. Mr. Nell opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, Bill Demrow had stepped up beside Ben. It was my idea, Eddie said abruptly, and stepped up on Ben's other side. What's this Me Too? Mr. Nell asked. Is that your name or your address, buckaroo? Eddie flushed brightly. The color went all the way up to the roots of his hair. I was with Bill before Ben even came, he said. That was all I meant. Richie sat up next to Eddie. The idea that a voice or two might cheer Mr. Nell up a little, get him thinking jolly thoughts, popped into his head. On second thought, and second thoughts were, for Richie, extremely rare and wonderful things. Maybe a voice or two might only make things worse. Mr. Nell didn't look like he was in what Richie sometimes thought of a chuckalicious mood. In fact, Mr. Nell looked like maybe chucks were the last thing on his mind. So he just said, I was in on it too, in a low voice that made his mouth shut up. And me, Stan said, stepping next to Bill. Now the 5 of them were standing before Mr. Nell in the line. Ben looked from one side to the other, more than dazed. He was almost stupefied, by their support. For a moment, Richie thought old Haystack was going to burst in tears of gratitude. Jesus, Mr. Nell said again, and although he sounded deeply disgusted, his face suddenly looked as if he might like to laugh. A sorrier bunch of boyos I ain't never seen. If your folks knew where you were, I guess there'd be some hot bottoms tonight. I ain't sure there won't be, anyway. Richie could hold back no longer. His mouth simply fell open and then ran away like a gingerbread man, as it so often did. How's things back in the old country, Mr. Nell? He divulged. You're a set for sore eyes and Sure and Bagura. You're a lovely man. A credit to the old soul. Or a credit to the old I'll be a credit to the seat of your pants in about 3 seconds, my dear little friend, Mr. Nell said dryly. Bill turned on him, snarled. For God's sake, Richie, shut up! Good advice, Master William Dambro, Mr. Nell said. I'll bet Zach doesn't know you're down here in the barrens playing against the floating turdies, does he? Bill dropped his eyes, shook his head. Wild roses burned in his cheeks. Mr. Nell looked at Ben. I don't recall your name, son. Ben Hanscom, sir, Ben whispered. Mr. Nell nodded and looked back at the dam. This was your idea? How to build it, yeah. Ben's whisper was now nearly inaudible. Well, you're a hell of an engineer, big boy, but you don't know jack shit about these barrens or the dairy drainage system, do you? Ben shook his head. Not unkindly, Mr. Nell told him. There's two parts to the system. One part carries solid human waste, shit if I'd not be offending your tender ears. The other part carries grey water, water flushed from toilets or run down from the drains, from sinks, from washing machines and showers. It's also the water that runs down the gutters into the city drains. Well, you've caused no problems with the solid waste removal, thank God. All that gets pumped into the Condescake, a bit farther down. There's probably some almighty big patties down that way, half a mile Ryan and the sun thinks what you done. But you can be sure that there ain't shit sticking to anyone's ceiling because of it. But as for the grey water, well, there's no pumps for grey water. That all runs downhill in what the engineer boyos call gravity drains. And I bet you know where all them gravity drains end up, don't you, big boy? Up there, Ben said. He pointed to the area behind the dam, the area they had a large part in He pointed to the area behind the dam, the area they had in large part submerged. He did this without looking up. Big tears were beginning to course slowly down his cheeks. Mr. Nell pretended not to notice. That's right, my large young friend. All of them gravity drains feed into streams that feed into the upper barrens. In fact, a good many of them little streams that come trickling down are grey water, and grey water only, coming out of drains you can't even see, they're so deep buried in the underbrush. That shit goes one way and everything else goes the other. God praise the clever mind, oh man. Did it ever cross your minds that you'd spent the whole livelong day paddling around in Derry's peeing old wash water? Eddie suddenly began to gasp and had to use his aspirator. What you did was back water up about 6 or 8 central catch basins. What you did was back water up into about 6 or 8 central catch basins that serve Witcham and Jackson and Kansas and 4 or 5 little streets that run between them. Mr. Nell fixed Bill Denbrough with a dry glance. One of them serves your own hearth and home, young Master Denbrough. So there we are, with sinks that won't drain, washing machines that won't drain, outflow pipes pouring merrily into cellars. Ben let out a dry barking sob. The others turned toward him and then looked away. Mr. Nell put a large hand on the boy's shoulder. It was callous and hard, but at the moment it was so gentle. It was also gentle, not so gentle. Now, no need to take on, big boy. Maybe it ain't that bad, at least not yet. Could be I exaggerated just a mite to make sure you took my point. They sent me down to see if a tree blew down across the stream. That happens from time to time. There's no need for anyone but me and you 5 to know it wasn't just that. We've got more important things to worry about in town these days than a little backed up water. I'll say in my report that I located the blowdown and some boys came along and helped me shift it out of the way of the water. Not that I'll mention you by name. You'll be getting no citations for dam building in the barrens. He surveyed the 5 of them. Ben was furiously wiping his eyes with his handkerchief. Bill was looking thoughtfully at the dam. Eddie was holding his aspirate in one hand. Stan stood close by Richie with one hand on Richie's arm, ready to squeeze hard if Richie should show the slightest sign of having anything to say other than thank you very much. You boys got no business at all in this dirty place like this, Mr. Nell went on. There's probably 60 different kinds of diseases or kinds of disease breeding down here. Breeding came out braiding, as in what a girl may do with her hair in the morning. Okay. There's probably 60 different kinds of disease braiding down here. Dumped down one way, streams full of piss and grey water, muck and slop, bugs and brambles, quick mud. You got no business at all in a dirty place like this. 4 clean city parks for you boys to be playing ball in all day long, and I catch you down here. Jesus Christ. I have so much spit in my mouth. We like it down here, Bill said suddenly and defiantly. When we come down here, nobody gives us any static. What'd he say? Mr. Nell asked Eddie. He said when we come down here nobody gives us any static, Eddie said. His voice was thin and whistling, but it also was unmistakably firm. And he's right. When guys like us go to the park and say we want to play baseball, the other guys say, "Sure, you want to be second base or third?" Richie cackled. "Eddie gets off a good one, and you are there!" Mr. Nell swung his head to look at him. Richie shrugged. "Sorry, but he's right. And Bill's right, too. We like it down here." Richie thought Mr. Nell would become angry again at that, but the white-haired cop surprised them all, with a smile. "Yeah? Is that how you say it? I'm so disappointed in myself. Do you say yeah? Is it yeah? 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 I don't know," he said. "I liked it down here myself as a boy, so I did. And I'll not forbid ye. But hark to what I'm telling you now." He leveled a finger at them, and they all looked at him soberly. "If you come down here to play, you come in a gang like you are now, together. Do you understand me?" They nodded. "That means together all the time. No hide-and-seek games where you split up one and one. You all know what's going on in this town. All the same, I don't forbid you to come down here, mostly because you'd be down here anyway, but for your own good, here or anywhere around, gang together." Looked at Bill. "Do you disagree with me, young Master Denbrough?" No, sir," Bill said. "We'll stay That's good enough for me," Mr. Nell said. "Your hand on it." Bill stuck out his hand, and Mr. Nell shook it. Richie shook off Stan and stepped forward. "Sure and begory, Mr. Nell, you're a prince among men, you are. A fine man, a fine man." He stuck out his own hand, seized the Irishman's huge paw, and flagged it furiously, grinning all the time. To the bemused Mr. Nell, the boy looked like a hideous parody of Franklin D. Roosevelt. "Thank you, boy," Mr. Nell said, retrieving his hand. "I want to work on that a bit. As of now, you sound about as Irish as Groucho Marx." The other boys laughed, mostly in relief, even as he was laughing, but Stan shot Richie a reproachful look. "Grow up, Richie." Mr. Nell shook hands all around, gripping Ben's last of all. "You've got nothing to be ashamed of but bad judgment, big boy. As for that there, did you see I did that in a book?" Ben shook his head. "Just figured it out?" "Yes, sir." Well, if that don't beat Harry, he'll do great things some day, I've no doubt. But the Barrens isn't the place to do 'em." He looked around thoughtfully. "No great thing will ever be done here. Nasty place," he sighed. "Tear it down, dear boys, tear it right down. I believe I'll just sit me down in the shade of this bush and bide a weave as you do it." He looked ironically at Richie as he said this last, as if inviting another manic outburst. "Yes, sir," Richie said humbly, and that was all. Mr. Nell nodded, satisfied, and the boys fell to work, once again turning to Ben, this time to show them the quickest way to tear down what he had shown them to build. Meanwhile, Mr. Nell removed a brown bottle from inside his tunic and helped himself to a large gulp. He coughed, then blew out breath in an explosive sigh and regarded the boys in watery, benign eyes. "What might you have done in your bottle, sir?" Richie asked from the place where he was standing knee-deep in water. "Richie, can't you ever shut up?" Eddie hissed. "This?" Mr. Nell regarded Richie with mild surprise and looked at the bottle again. It had no label of any kind on it. "This is the cough medicine of the gods, my boy. And let's see if you can bend your back anywhere near as fast as you can wag your tongue." Water break. I had been working on my Irish accent, but I don't trust myself enough to do it. So, I'm not going to do it. 3. Bill and Richie were walking up Witcham Street together later on. Bill was pushing Silver after first building and then tearing down the dam. He simply did not have the energy it would have taken to get Silver up to cruising speed. Both boys were dirty, disheveled, and pretty well used up. Stan had asked them if they wanted to come over to his house and play Monopoly or Parcheesi or something, but none of them wanted to. It was getting late. Ben, sounding tired and depressed, said he was going to go home and see if anybody had returned his library books. He had some hope of this, since the Derry Library insisted on writing in the borrower's street address as well as his name on each book's pocket card. Eddie said he was going to watch the rock show on TV because Neil Sedaka was going to be on. He wanted to see if Neil Sedaka was a black person. I don't know if it's okay to say that. I don't really want to say that. A black person. Stupid freaking book. Stan told Eddie not to be so stupid. Neil Sedaka was white. You could tell he was white just from listening to him. Eddie claimed he couldn't tell anything by listening to them. Until last year, he had been positive Chuck Berry was white, but when he was on Bandstand, he turned out to be a black man. My mother still thinks he's white, so that's one good thing, Eddie said. If she finds out he's a black man, she probably won't let me listen to his songs anymore. It's the N-word, but not like the bad N-word, like, you know. Stand by Eddie 4 funny books that Neil Sedaka was white, and the two of them set off together for Eddie's house to settle the issue. And here were Bill and Richie, headed in a direction which would bring them to Bill's house after a while, neither of them talking much. Richie found himself thinking about Bill's story of the picture that had turned in his head and winked. And in spite of this tiredness, an idea came to him. It was crazy, but it also held a certain attraction. Wait, who is this guy that they're talking about? I want to see who's right. Neil Sedaka. Sedaka? Probably Sedaka. I don't know. Sedaka. He's white. Stan's right. Stan gets the 4 funny books. Woo, go Stan. Okay. Anyways. Billy, me boy, he said. Let's stop for a while. Take 5. I'm dead. No such luck, Bill said, but he stopped, laid Silver down carefully down the edge of the green theological seminary lawn, and the 2 boys sat on the wide stone steps which led up to the rambling red Victorian structure. What a day, Bill said glumly. There were dark purplish patches under his eyes. His face looked white and used. You better call your house when we get to mine so your folks don't go bananas. Yeah, you bet. Listen, Bill. Richie paused for a moment, thinking about Ben's mummy, Eddie's leper, and whatever Stan had almost told them. For a moment, something swam in his own mind, something about that Paul Bunyan statue out by the city center, that had only been a dream, for God's sake. So he did see Pennywise, but it was a dream, for God's sake. He pushed away such irrelevant thoughts and plunged. Let's go up to your house. What do you say? Take a look at Georgie's room? I want to see that picture. Bill looked at Richie, shocked. Tried to speak, but could not. His stress was simply too great. Settled for shaking his head violently. Richie said, You heard Eddie's story, and Ben's. Do you believe what they said? I don't know. I think they must have seen something. Yeah, me too. All the kids that have been killed around here, I think all of them would have stories to tell, too. The only difference between Ben and Eddie and those other kids is that Ben and Eddie didn't get caught. Bill raised his eyebrows, but showed no great surprise. Richie had supposed Bill wouldn't have taken it that far himself. He couldn't talk so good, but he was no dummy. So now dig on this a while, Big Bill, Richie said. A guy could dress up in a clown suit and kill kids. I don't know why he'd want to, but nobody can tell why crazy people do things, right? Right. It's not that much different than the Joker in the Batman funny book. Just hearing his ideas out loud excited Richie. He wondered briefly if he was actually trying to prove something or just throwing up a smokescreen of words so he could see that room, that picture. In the end, it probably didn't matter. In the end, maybe just seeing Bill's eyes light up with their own excitement was enough. What do you... Where does the picture fit in? What do you think, Billy? In a low voice, not looking at Richie, Bill said he didn't think it had anything to do with the murders. I think it was Georgie's ghost. A ghost in a picture? Bill nodded. Richie thought about it. The idea of ghosts gave his child's mind no troubles at all. He was sure there were such things. His parents were Methodists. Methodists. And Richie went to church every Sunday and to Thursday night Methodist Young Fellowship meetings as well. He knew a great deal of the Bible already, and he knew the Bible believes in all sorts of weird stuff. According to the Bible, God himself was at least 1/3 ghost, and that was just the beginning. You could tell the Bible believed in demons because Jesus threw a bunch of them out of the sky. Real chuckalicious ones, too. When Jesus asked the guy who had them what his name was, the demons answered and told him to go join the Foreign Legion, or something like that. The Bible believes in witches, or else why would it say, Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live? Some of the stuff in the Bible was even better than the stuff in the horror comics. People getting boiled in oil or hanging themselves like Judas Iscariot. I haven't read the Bible. The story about how wicked King Ahaz fell off the tower and all the dogs came and licked up his blood. The mass baby murderers that accompanied the births of both Moses and Jesus Christ, guys who came out of their graves or flew into the air, soldiers who witched down walls, prophets who saw the future and fought monsters. All of that was in the Bible, and every word of it was true. So said Reverend Craig, and so said Richie's folks, and so said Richie. He was perfectly willing to credit a possibility of Bill's explanation. It was the logic which troubled him. But you said you were scared. Why would George's ghost want to scare you, Bill? Bill put a hand to his mouth and wiped it. The hand was trembling slightly. He's probably mad at me, getting him killed. It was my fault. I sent him out with. He was incapable of getting the word out, so he rocked his hand in the air instead. Bill nodded to show he understood what Bill meant, but not to indicate agreement. I don't think so, he said. If you stabbed him in the back or shot him, that would be different. Or even if you, gave him a loaded gun that belonged to your dad just to play with and he shot himself with it. But it wasn't a gun, it was just a boat. You didn't want to hurt him, in fact. Richie raised one finger and waggled it at Bill in a lawyerly way. You just wanted the kids to have a little fun, right? Bill thought desperately hard. What Richie had just said had made him feel better about George's death for the first time in months. But there was a part of him which insisted that quiet firmness that he was not supposed to feel better. Of course it was your fault. That part of him insisted, not entirely maybe, but at least partially. If not, how come there's that cold place on the couch between your mother and father? If not, how come no one ever says anything about this at the supper table anymore? Now it's just knives and forks rattling until you can't take it anymore and ask if you can be excused, please. It was as if he were the ghost, a presence that spoke and moved, but was not quite heard or seen, a thing vaguely sensed but still not accepted as real. He did not like to think the thought that he was to blame, but the only alternative he could think of to explain their behavior was much worse. That all the love and the attention his parents had given him before had somehow been the result of Georgie's presence. And with George gone, there was nothing for him. I keep on calling him George, but I always just say Georgie because, that's his name. His name's Georgie. So I'm sorry if you're reading along and you know that I'm messing everything up. That's the reason. I don't want to call him George. It's not his name. And all of that happened at random for no reason at all. And if you put your ear to that door, you could hear the winds of madness blowing outside. So he went over what he had done and felt and said on that day Georgie had died. Part of him hoping that what Richie had said was true. Part of him hoping just as hard it was not. He hadn't been a saint to have a big brother to George, that much was certain. They had had fights, plenty of them. Surely there had been one that day. No fight. For one thing, Bill himself had still been feeling too punk to work up a really good quarrel with George. He had been sleeping, dreaming about some turtle. Funny little animal. Couldn't remember just what. He had awakened to the sound of the diminishing rain outside and George muttering unhappily to himself in the dining room. He had asked George what was wrong. George came in and said he was trying to make a paper boat from the directions in his best book of activities, but it kept coming out wrong. I keep on calling him George. I'm going to call him Georgie. Bill told Georgie to bring his book, and sitting next to Richie on the steps leading up to the seminary, he remembered how Georgie's eyes lit up when the paper boat came out right, and how good that look made him feel, like Georgie thought he was a real hot shit, a straight shooter, the guy who could do it until it got done. The guy who could do it until it got done. Make him feel, in short, like a big brother. That boat had killed George, but Richie was right. It hadn't been like handing George a loaded gun to play with. Bill hadn't known what was going to happen. No way he could. He drew a deep, shuddering breath, feeling something like a rock, something he hadn't even known was there, go rolling off his chest. All at once he felt better about everything. He opened his mouth to tell Richie this, and burst into tears instead. Alarmed, Richie put an arm around Bill's shoulders, after taking a quick glance around to make sure no one might mistake them for a couple of fagolas he was looking. You're okay, he said. You're okay, Billy, right? Come on, turn off the waterworks. I didn't want him to get killed, Bill sobbed. That wasn't on my mind at all. Christ, Billy, I know it wasn't, Richie said. If you'd wanted to scrub him, you could have just pushed him downstairs or something. Richie patted Bill's shoulder clumsily and gave him a hard little hug before letting go. Come on, quit bawling, okay? You sound like a baby. Little by little, Bill stopped. He still hurt, but this hurt seemed cleaner, as if he had cut himself open and taken out something that was rotting inside him. And that feeling of relief was still there. I didn't want him to get killed, Bill repeated. And if you tell anybody I was crying, I'll bust your nose. I won't tell, Richie said. Don't worry. It was your brother, for gosh sake. If my brother got killed, I'd cry my fucking head off. You don't have a brother. Yeah, but if I did, you would? Of course. Richie paused, fixing Bill with a wary eye, trying to decide if Bill was really over it. He was still wiping his red eyes with his snot rag, but Richie decided he probably was. All I meant was that I don't know why George would want to haunt you. Maybe the picture's got something to do with, well, what the other. Wait, so maybe the picture's got something to do with, well, with that other. The clown. Maybe George doesn't know. Maybe he thinks. Richie understood what Bill was trying to say and waved it aside. After your croak, you know everything people ever thought about you, Big Bill. He spoke with an indulgent air of a great teacher correcting a country bumpkin's fatuous ideas. It's in the Bible. It says, yay? Is it yay? I think it's yay. Yay, even though we can't see too much in the mirror right now, we will see through it like it was a window after we die. That's in the first Thelonians or second Babylonians. I forget which. It means I see what it means, Bill said. So what do you say? Huh? Let's go up to his room and take a look. Maybe we'll get a clue about who's killing all the kids. I'm that was so bad. I'm scared too. I am too, Richie said, thinking it was just more sand, something to say that would get Bill moving. Then something heavy turned over in his midsection and discovered it was true. He was scared green. We still got 4 plus 10. 14 pages. Oh, we're like almost all done. Yay! The second part that we have to read next time is 40 pages, and I hope we can get through it because 40 is like a little bit too much. 30 is perfect. So let's see how that goes. I want to do more lives this week since it's like break and I'm off of school. I don't know if other people are off of school, if you guys are in school. So I don't want to like be messing up other people's schedules, but also these videos always go on my YouTube channel too, so you can watch them whenever you had the chance. Okay. So yeah, I wanted to go live more this week to kind of catch up because we got a lot of book to get through. I think I did the math, we're gonna get done in like mid-March or something if I only did this every Saturday, and of course we're gonna miss Saturdays every once in a while or not read as much as we wanted to. So I feel like I need to make more videos, so I will be going on my TikTok to talk about the new schedule for Thanksgiving break. I'm looking at my calendar right now, and I kind of want to do like every single night, but also like I don't know how plausible that is. If you are not following my TikTok, you should. I'm gonna write it right here in the chat. Oop, I spelled it wrong. Yep, that's how you spell it. So you can go follow that, and you'll see all the updates about readings. Also subscribe over here because I will make like the posts ahead of time, like we're going live in this amount of time ahead of time. And then you can like come on over here and like join early, and we'll start at 10. It'll be 10 probably every single night, no matter what. So yeah, stay posted. Alright, let's get back to it. Alrighty. Alright. 4. The 2 boys slipped into the Denbrough house like ghosts. Bill's father was still at work. Sharon Denbrough was in the kitchen reading a paperback at the kitchen table. The smell of supper, codfish, drifted out into the front hall. Bill called home so his mom would know he wasn't dead, just at Bill's. "Someone there?" Mrs. Denbrough called as Richie put the phone down. They froze, eyeing each other guiltily. Then Bill called, "Me, Mom, and Richie Tozier, ma'am," Richie yelled. "Hello, Richie," Mrs. Denbrough called back, her voice disconnected. Almost not there at all. "Would you like to stay for supper?" "Thanks, ma'am, but my mom's going to pick me up in a half hour or so." "Tell her I said hello, won't you?" "Yes, ma'am, I sure will." "Come on," Bill whispered. "That's enough small talk." They went upstairs and down the hall to Bill's room. It was boy neat, which meant it would have given the mother of a boy in question only a mild headache to look at. That makes sense. Okay, got it. The shelves were stuffed with a helter-skelter collection of books and comics. There were more comics, a few models and toys, and a stack of 45s on the desk. There was also an old Underwood office model typewriter on it. Stokes had given it to him for Christmas 2 years ago, and Bill sometimes wrote stories on it. He did this a bit more frequently since George's death. The pretending seemed to ease his mind. There was a phonograph on the floor across from the bed, with a pile of folded clothes stacked on the lid. Bill put the clothes in the drawers of his bureau and took the records from the desk. He shuffled through them, picking half a dozen. He put them on the phonograph's fat spindle and turned the machine on. The Fleetwood started singing, "Come Softly, Darling." I'm going to write that down so I remember to listen to that later. Pencil. Come softly, darling, by the Fleetwoods. All right. Richie held his nose. Bill grinned in spite of his thumping heart. "They don't like rock and roll," he said. "They gave me this one for my birthday. Also 2 Pat Bowen records and Tommy Sands. I keep Little Richard and Screamin' Jaw Hawkins when they're not here. But if she hears music, she'll think we're in my room. Come on." George's room was across the hall. The door was shut. Richie looked at it and licked his lips. "They don't keep it locked?" he whispered to Bill. Suddenly he found himself hoping it was locked. Suddenly he was having trouble believing that this had been his idea. Bill, his face pale, shook his head and turned the knob. He stepped in and looked back at Richie. After a moment, Richie followed. Bill shut the door behind them, muffling the Fleetwoods. Richie jumped a little at the soft snake of the latch. He looked around, fearful and intensely curious at the same time. The first thing he noticed was the dry mustiness in the air. No one's opened a window in here for a long time, he thought. Heck, no one's breathed in here for a long time. That's really what it feels like. He shuddered at the thought of it and licked his lips again. His eyes fell on George's bed, and he thought of George sleeping now under a comforter of earth in Mount Hope Cemetery, rotting there. His hands not folded because he needed 2 hands to do the old folding routine, and Georgie had been buried with only one. Ah! I have a hard time remembering that Georgie only had 1 arm at the end of his life. Okay. A little sound escaped Richie's throat. Bill turned and looked at him inquiringly. "You're right," Richie said huskily. "It's spooky in here. I don't see how he could stand coming alone." "He was my brother," Bill said simply. "Sometimes I want to, is all." There were posters on the walls, little kid posters. One showed Tom Terrific, the cartoon character on Captain Kangaroo's program. Tom was bringing over the head of and clutching hands of Crabby Appleton, who was, of course, rotten to the core. Another showed Donald Duck's nephews, Huey, Louie, and Dewey. Huey, Louie, and Dewey. I always say Huey, Dewey, and Louie. Silly. Marching off into the wilderness in their junior woodchucks' coonskin caps. A third, which George had colored himself, showed Mr. Dew holding up traffic so a bunch of little kids headed for school could cross the road. "Mr. Dew says, wait for the crossing guard," it said underneath. Kid wasn't too cool about staying in the lines, Richie thought, and then shuddered. Kid was never going to get any better at it either. Because he's missing an arm or because he's dead. Richie looked at the table by the window. Mrs. Denbrough had stood up olive George's rank cards there, half open. Aw. Looking at them, knowing there would never be more, knowing that George had died before he could stay in the lines, but he colored, knowing his life had been ended irrevocably and eternally with only those few kindergarten and first grade rank cards. All the idiot truth of death crashed home to Richie for the first time. It was as if a large iron safe had fallen into his brains and buried itself there. I could die, his mind screamed at him, suddenly in tones of betrayed horror. Anybody could! Anybody could! Boy, oh boy, he said in a shaky voice. He can manage no more. I'm stressed out right now. Yeah, Bill said in a near whisper. He sat down on George's bed. Look. Richie followed Bill's pointing finger and saw the photo album lying closed on the floor. My photographs, Richie read. George Elmer Denbrough, age 6. Age 6! His mind shrieked in the same tones of shrill betrayal. Age 6 forever! Anybody could! Shit, fucking anybody! It was open, Bill said. Before. So it closed, Richie said uneasily. He sat down on the bed beside Bill and looked at the photo album. Lots of books close on their own. The pages, maybe, but not the cover. It closed itself. He looked at Richie solemnly, his eyes very dark in his pale, tired face. But it wants you to open it again. That's what I think. Richie got up and walked slowly over to the photograph album. It lay at the base of the window screened with light curtains. Looking out, he could see the apple tree in the Denbrough backyard. Aw, they have an apple tree. A swing rocked slowly back and forth from the one gnarled black limb. They have a swing on their apple tree. Georgie! He looked down at George's book again. A dried maroon stain colored the thickness of the pages in the middle of the book. Could have been old ketchup. Sure, it was easy enough to see George looking at his photo album while eating a hot dog or a big sloppy hamburger. Takes a big bite and some ketchup squirts out onto the book. Little kids were always doing spasmoid stuff like that. Could be ketchup, but Richie knew it was not. He touched the album briefly, then drew his hand away. It felt cold. It had been lying in a place where the strong summer sunlight, only slightly filtered by those light curtains, would have been falling on it all day, but it felt cold. Well, I'll just leave it alone, Richie thought. I don't want to look in his stupid old album anyway. See a lot of people I don't know. I think maybe I'll tell Bill I changed my mind and we can go to his room and read comic books for a while. And then I'll go home and I'll eat supper and go to bed early because I'm pretty tired. And when I wake up tomorrow morning, I'll be sure that stuff was just ketchup. That's what I'll do. Yowza. So he opened the album with hands that seemed like 1,000 miles away from him, at the end of long plastic arms, and looked at the faces and places in George's album. The aunts, the uncles, the babies, the houses, the old Fords and stud bakers, the telephone lines, the mailboxes, the picket fence, the wheel ruts with muddy water in them, the Ferris wheel at the Utsi County Fair, the standpipe, the ruins of the Kitchener Ironworks. His fingers flipped faster and faster, and suddenly the pages were blank. He turned back, not wanting to, but unable to help himself. Here was a picture of downtown Derry, Main Street, Canal Street, from around 1930. And beyond it was nothing. There's no school picture of George in here, Richie said. Looked at Bill with a mixture of relief and exasperation. What kind of line were you handing me, Big Bill? Why does Richie call him George? That's annoying. Oh, well, my friend has a sister who goes by a nickname, and I always call her by her actual first name. So never mind, I'm a hypocrite. What? This picture of downtown in these olden days is the last one in the book. All the rest of the pages are blank. Bill got off the bed and joined Richie. Looked at the picture of downtown Derry as it had been almost 30 years ago. Old-fashioned cars and trucks, old-fashioned streetlights with clusters of globes like big white grapes, pedestrians by the canal caught in mid-stride by the click of a shutter. Turned to the page, and just as Richie had said, there was nothing. Oh wait, not quite nothing. There was one studio corner, sort of an item you would use to mount photographs. It was here, he said, and tapped the studio corner. Look. Jeepers. What do you think happened to it? I don't know. Bill had taken the album from Richie and was now holding it on his own lap. He turned back through the pages, looking for George's picture. He gave up after a minute, but the pages did not. They turned themselves, slipping slowly but steadily, with big, deliberate riffling sounds. Bill and Richie looked at each other, wide-eyed, and then back down. It arrived at the last picture again, and the pages stopped turning. Here was downtown Derry in sepia tones, city as it had been long before either Bill or Richie had been born. "Say," Richie said suddenly and took the album back from Bill. There was no fear in his voice now, and his face was suddenly full of wonder. "Holy shit! What? What is it? Us! That's what it is! Holy Jeezly Crow, look!" Bill took one side of the book, bent over it, sharing it. They looked like boys at choir practice. Bill drew in a breath sharply, and Richie knew he had seen it too. Caught under the shiny surface of his old black-and-white photographs, two small boys were walking along Main Street toward the point where Main and Center intersected, the point where the canal went underground for a mile and a half or so. The two boys showed up clearly against the low concrete wall at the edge of the canal. One was wearing knickers. The other was wearing something that looked almost like a sailor suit. A tweed cap was perched on his head. They were turned in three-quarter profile toward the camera, looking at something on the far side of the street. The boy in the knickers was Richie Tozier, beyond a doubt, and the boy in the sailor suit and the tweed cap was stuttering Bill. They stared at themselves in a picture almost 3 times as old as they were, hypnotized. The insides of Richie's mouth suddenly felt dry as dust and smooth as glass. A few steps ahead of the boys in the picture there was a man holding the brim of his fedora, her top coat frozen forever as it flapped out behind him in a sudden gust of wind. There were Model Ts on the street, a Pierce Arrow, Chevrolets with running boards. I don't believe, Bill began, and now was when the picture began to move. The Model T that should have remained eternally in the middle of the intersection, or at least until the chemicals in the old photo had finally dissolved completely, passed through it, a haze of exhaust puffing out of its tailpipe, went on toward Up Mile Hill. A small white hand shot out of the driver's side window and signaled a left turn. Swung onto Court Street and passed beyond the photo's white border and so out of sight. The Pierce Arrow, the Chevrolets, the Packards, they all began to roll along, dodging their separate ways through the intersection. After 28 years or so, the skirt of the man's topcoat finally finished its flap. He settled his hat firmly on his head and walked on. The two boys completed their turn, coming full face, and a moment later Richie saw what they had been looking at was a mangy dog Richie saw what they had been looking at as a mangy dog came trotting across Center Street. The boy in the sailor suit, Bill, raised 2 fingers to the corner of his mouth and whistled. Stunned beyond any ability to move or think, Richie realized he could hear the whistle. He could hear the car's irregular sewing machine engines. The sounds were faint, like sounds heard through thick glass, but they were there. The dog glanced toward the two boys and trotted on. The boys glanced at each other and laughed like chipmunks. They started to walk on, and then Richie and Knickers grabbed Bill's arm and pointed toward the canal. They turned in that direction. "No," Richie thought. "Don't do that, don't." They went to the low concrete wall, and suddenly the clown popped up over its edge like a horrible jack-in-the-box. A clown with Richie... Oh my gosh, I need to stop. I can't read today. They went over to the low concrete wall, and suddenly the clown popped up over its edge like a horrible jack-in-the-box. A clown with Georgie Denbrough's face, his hair slicked back, his mouth a hideous grin full of bleeding grease paint, his eyes black holes. One hand clutched 3 balloons on a string. With the other, he reached for the boy in the sailor suit and seized his neck. "No!" Bill cried and reached into the picture. "Stop it, Bill!" Richie shouted and grabbed for him. It was almost too late. He saw the tips of Bill's fingers go through the surface of the photograph and into that other world. He saw the fingertips go from that warm pink of living flesh to the mummified cream color that passed for white in old photos. At the same time, they became small and disconnected. It was like the peculiar optical illusion one sees when one thrusts a hand into a glass bowl of water. The part of the hand underwater seemed to be floating, disembodied, inches away from the part which was still out of the water. A series of diagonal cuts slashed across Bill's fingers at that point, where they ceased being his fingers and became photo fingers. It was as if he had stuck his hand into the blades of a fan instead of a picture. Bill seized his forearm and gave a tremendous yank. They both fell over. George's album hit the floor and snapped itself shut with a dry clap. Bill stuck his fingers in his mouth. Tears of pain stood in his eyes. Richie could see blood running down his palm to his wrist in thin streams. "Let me see," he said. "Hurts," Bill said. He held his hand out to Richie, palm down. They read ladder-like, slashed cuts running up his index, second, and third fingers. The pinky had barely touched the surface of the photograph, but it had a surface. And although that finger had not been cut, Bill told Richie later that the nail had been neatly clipped, as if with a pair of manicure scissors. Jesus, Bill, Richie said. Band-aids. That was all I could think of. God, they had been lucky. If he hadn't pulled Bill's arm out when he did, his fingers might have been amputated instead of just badly cut. We gotta fix those up. Your mother can. Never mind my mother, Bill said. He grabbed the photo album again, spilling drops of blood on the floor. Don't open that again, Richie cried, grabbing frantically at Bill's shoulder. Jesus Christ, Bill, you almost lost your fingers. Bill shook him off. He flipped through the pages, and there was a grim determination on his face that scared Richie more than anything else. Bill's eyes looked almost mad. His wounded fingers printed Georgie's album with new blood. Didn't look like ketchup yet, but when it had little time to dry, it would. Of course it would. And here was the downtown scene again. The Model T stood in the middle of the intersection. The other cars were frozen in place where they had been before. The man walking toward the intersection held the brim of his fedora, his coat once more bellied out in mid-flap. The two boys were gone. There were no boys in the picture anywhere, but... Look, Richie whispered and pointed. He was careful to keep the tip of his finger well away from the picture. An arc showed just over the low concrete wall at the edge of the canal, the top of something round, something like a balloon. That was rough. There's still a little bit more. We're not done yet. Not done yet. 5. They got out of George's room just in time. Bill's mother was a voice at the foot of the stairs in shadow on a wall. Have you boys been wrestling? She asked sharply. I heard a thud. Just a little, Mom. Bill threw a sharp glance at Richie. Be quiet, it said. Well, I want you to stop it. I thought the ceiling was going to come right down on my head. We will. They heard her go back toward the front of the house. Bill had wrapped his handkerchief around his bleeding hand. Oh, the 50s, handkerchiefs. It was turning red, and in the moment it would start to drip. The boys went down to the bathroom where Bill held his hand under the faucet until the bleeding stopped. Cleaned, the cuts looked thin, but cruelly deep. Looking at their white lips and the red meat just inside them made Richie feel sick to his stomach. He wrapped them with band-aids as fast as he could. Hurts like hell, Bill said. Well, why do you want to go to put your hand in there, you wet end? Bill looked solemnly at the rings of band-aids on his fingers, then at Richie. It was the clown, he said. It was the clown pretending to be George. That's right, Richie said. Like it was the clown pretending to be the mummy when Ben saw it. Like it was the clown pretending to be that sick bum Eddie saw. The leper. Right. But is it really a clown? It's a monster, Richie said flatly. Some kind of monster. Some kind of monster right here in Derry. And it's killing kids. 6. On a Saturday, not long after the incident at the dam in the Barrens. Wait a minute. This isn't going to be another scare. No. Oh, we're fine. Okay. I know what's going on now. On a Saturday, not long after the incident of the dam in the Barrens, Mr. Now and the picture that had moved, Richie, Ben, and Beverly Marsh came face to face with not one of those monsters, but two, and they paid to do it. Richie did anyway. These monsters were scary, but not really dangerous. They stalked their victims on the streets of the Aladdin Theater, while Richie, Ben, and Bev watched from the balcony. One of the monsters was a werewolf, played by Michael Landon. He was cool because even when he was the werewolf, he still had a sort of duck-ass's haircut. The other was this smashed-up hod trotter, played by Gary Conway. He was brought back to life by a descendant of Victor Frankenstein, who fed all parts he didn't need to a bunch of alligators he kept in the basement. Also on the program, a movie-tone newsreel that showed the latest Paris fashions and the latest Vanguard rocket explosions at Cape Canaveral. 2 Warner Brothers cartoons, 1 Popeye cartoon, and a Chilly Willy cartoon. For some reason, the hat Chilly Willy wore always cracked Richie up. And previews of coming attractions. The coming attractions included 2 pictures Richie immediately put on his gotta-see list. I Married a Monster from Outer Space and The Blob. Ben was very quiet during the show. Old Haystack had nearly been spotted by Henry, Belch, and Victor earlier, and Richie assumed that was all that was troubling him. Ben, however, had forgotten all about the creeps. They were sitting close to the screen down below, chucking popcorn boxes at each other and hooting. Beverly was the reason for his silence. Her nearness was so overwhelming that he was almost ill with it. His body would break out into goosebumps, and then, if she should so much as shift in her seat, his skin would flash hot, as if with tropical fever. When her hand brushed his reaching for popcorn, he trembled with exaltation. He thought later that those 3 hours in the dark next to Beverly had been both the longest and shortest hours of his life. Richie, unaware that Ben was in deep throes of calf love, like calf, like a baby cow, calf love. Wait, no, that's what they're called. Was feeling just as fine as paint. In his book, the only thing better than a couple of Francis the Talking Mule pictures was a couple of horror pictures in a theater filled with kids, all of them yelling and screaming at the gory parts. He certainly did not connect any of the going-ons with the low-budget American International pictures they were watching with what was going on in town, not then at least. He had seen the Twin Shock Show Saturday matinee ad in the news on Friday morning and almost immediately forgotten how badly he had slept the night before, and we had finally gone up and turned on the light in his closet, a real baby trick for sure. But he hadn't been able to get a wink of sleep until he'd done it. But by the following morning, things had seemed normal again. Well, almost. He began to think that maybe he and Bill had just shared a hallucination. Of course, the cuts on Bill's fingers weren't a hallucination. Maybe they'd just been paper cuts of some of the sheets in Georgie's album. Pretty thick paper. Could have been, maybe. Besides, there was no law saying he had to spend the next 10 years thinking about it, was there? Nope. And so, following an experience might well have sent an adult running for the nearest head drinker, Richie Tozier got up, ate a giant pancake breakfast, saw the ad for the 2 horror movies on the amusements page of the paper, checked his funds, found them a little low, well, non-existent might have been the better word, and began to pester his father for chores. Love this scene. His dad, who had come to the table already wearing his white dentist's tunic, put down the sports pages and poured himself a second cup of coffee. He was a pleasant-looking man with a rather thin face. He wore steel-rimmed spectacles and was developing a bald spot at the back of his head, and would die of cancer of the larynx in 1973. He looked at the ad to which Richie was pointing. Horror movies, Wentworth Tozier said. Yeah, Richie said, grinning. Feel like you have to go? Wentworth Tozier said. Yeah. Feel like you'll probably die in convulsions of disappointment if you don't get to see those 2 trashy movies. Yeah, I would. I know I would. Ah! Richie fell out of his chair onto the floor, clutching his throat, his tongue sticking out. This was Richie's admittedly peculiar way of turning on the charm. Oh God, Richie, will you please stop? His mother had asked him from the stove, where she was frying him a couple of eggs to top off the pancakes. Gee, Rich, his father said as Richie got back into his chair. I guess I must have forgotten to pay you your allowance on Monday. It's the only reason I can think of you needing more money on Friday. Well, gone. Oh no. Well, gone. Well, that's an extremely deep subject for a boy with such a shallow mind, Wentworth Tozier said. He put an elbow on the table and then cupped his chin to the palm of his hand, regarding his only son with what appeared to be deep fascination. Where'd it go? Richie immediately found the voice of Toodles' English butler. Why, I spent it, didn't I, governor? Pip, cheerio, and all that rot. My part of the war effort. All got to do our bit to beat back the bloody Hun, don't we? Bit of a sticky wicket, eh, yup? Bit of a bet hedgehog, what? Bit of a pile of bullshit, Wen said amiably, and reached for the strawberry preserves. Spare me the vulgarity at the breakfast table, if you please, Maggie Tozier said to her husband as she brought Richie's eggs over to the table. And to Richie, I don't know why you want to fill your head up with such awful junk anyway. Aw, Mom, Richie said. He was outwardly crushed, inwardly jubilant. He could read both of his parents like books, well-worn and well-loved books. He was pretty sure he was going to get what he wanted. Chores and permission to go to the show Saturday afternoon. Went leaned forward toward Richie and smiled widely. I think I have you right where I want you, he said. Is that right, Dad? Richie said and smiled back, a trifle uneasily. Oh, yes. You know our lawn, Richie? You are familiar with our lawn. Indeed I am, governor, Richie said, becoming Toodles again, or trying to. Bit jaggy, what? What? Went agreed. And you, Richie, will remedy that condition. I will. You will. Mow it, Richie. Okay, Dad, sure, Richie said, but a terrible suspicion had suddenly blossomed in his mind. Maybe his dad didn't mean just the front lawn. Wentworth Tozier smiled wildly into a predatory shark's grin. All of it. Oh, idiot child of my loins, front, back, sides. And when you finish, I will cross your palm with 2 green pieces of paper with the likeness of George Washington on one side and a picture of pyramid overtopped with the ever-watching oculary on the other. I don't get you, Dad, Richie said, but he was afraid he did. $2. $2 for the whole lawn? Richie cried, genuinely wounded. It's the biggest lawn on the block! Jeez, Dad! Went sighed and picked up the paper again. Richie could read the front page headline: Missing Boy Prompts New Fears. Thought briefly of George Denbrough's strange scrapbook, but that had surely been a hallucination. And even if it hadn't, that was yesterday, and this was today. Guess you didn't want to see those movies as bad as you thought, Wen said from behind the paper. A moment later, his eyes appeared over the top, studying Richie. Studying him a trifle. Am I saying it right? Trifle? Trifle? This word is in here a lot, and I don't think I'm saying it right. Studies a trifle, smugly, in truth. Studying him the way a man with 4 of a kind studies his poker opponent from over a fan of his cards. When the Clark kids do it, you give them $2 each. That's true, Went admitted. But as far as I know, they don't want to go to the movies tomorrow. Or if they do, they must have funds sufficient to the occasion, because they haven't popped by to check the state of the herbage surrounding our our house lately. You, on the other hand, do want to go and find yourself lacking the funds to do so. The pressure you feel in your midsection may just be the 5 pancakes and 2 eggs you ate for breakfast, Richie, or it may just be the barrel I have you over. What? Wen's eyes emerged behind the paper again. He's blackmailing me, Richie said to his mother, who was eating dry toast. She was trying to lose weight again. This is blackmail. I just hope you know that. Yes, dear, I know that, his mother said. There's egg on your chin. Richie wiped the egg off his chin. $3 if I have it all done when you get home tonight. $3 if I have it all done when I get home. $3 if I have it all done by the time you get home tonight. Yes, the newspaper. His father's eyes appeared again briefly. $2.50. Oh, man, Richie said. You and Jack Benny. My idol, Went said from behind the paper. Make up your mind, Richie. I want to read these box scores. Deal, Richie said and sighed. When your folks had you by the balls, they really knew how to squeeze. It was pretty chuckalicious when he thought it over. As he mowed, he practiced his voices. I love Richie's parents in the book so much. I will forever be really upset with the miniseries, first of all, for not even including his parents, and the movies for making it seem like they were abusive and neglectful. Because this is some great stuff right here. I love his parents so much. This scene is one of my favorites in the entire book. It's so cute. I love them. Anyways. 7. He finished front, back, and sides by 3 o'clock Friday afternoon and began Saturday with $2.50 in his jeans. Pretty damn near a fortune. He called Bill up, but Bill told him glumly he had to go up to Bangor and take some kind of speech therapy test. Richie sympathized and added to his best, stuttering Bill voice. Give him help, Big Bill. Your face in my butt, Tozier, Bill said and hung up. He called Eddie Kasprak next, but Eddie sounded even more depressed than Bill. His mother had gotten each of them a full-day bus pass, he said, and they were going over to visit Eddie's aunts in Haven and Bangor and Hamden. All 3 of them were fat like Mrs. Kasprak, and all 3 of them were single. They'll all pinch my cheek and tell me how much I've grown, Eddie said. That's because they know how cute you are, Ed, just like me. I saw what a cutie you were the first time I met you. Sometimes you're really a turd, Richie. Takes one to know one, Eds, and you know them all. You gonna be down the Barrens next week? I guess so, if you guys are. Wanna play guns? Maybe, but I think me and Big Bill have got something to tell you. What? It's really Bill's story, I guess. I'll see you. Enjoy your aunts. Very funny. His third call was to Stan the man, but Stan was in Dutch playing his folks with... Oh, shoot. His third call was to Stan the man, but Stan was in Dutch playing... Oh, shoot, I can't read! His third call was to Stan the man, but Stan was in Dutch playing... Oh! His third call was to Stan the man, but Stan was in Dutch with his folks for breaking their picture window. He had been playing flying saucer with a pie plate and took a bad bank key rash. He had to do chores all weekend and probably next weekend too. Richie commiserated and then asked Stan if he would be going down to the Barrens next week. Stan said he guessed so if his father didn't decide to ground him or something. Gee, Stan, it was just a window, Richie said. Yeah, but a big one, Stan said and hung up. Okay. Just imagine Stanley, like, in his kitchen or something, just throwing plates. Anyways. Richie started to leave the living room, but thought of Ben Hanscom. He thumbed through the telephone book and found a late of listing for Arlene Hanscom. Since she was only Lady Hanscom among the 4 listed, Richie thought it had to be Ben's mother, and called. I'd like to go, but I already spent my allowance, Ben said. He sounded depressed and ashamed by the admission. He had, in fact, spent it all on candy, soda, chips, and beef jerky strips. Richie, who was rolling in dough and who didn't like to go to the movies alone, said, I got plenty of money. You can give me Ozies. Yeah, really? You do that? Sure, Richie said, puzzled. Why not? Okay, Ben said happily. Okay, that'd be great. 2 horror movies? Did you say one was a werewolf picture? Yeah. Man, I love werewolf pictures. Geez, Haystack, don't wet your pants. Ben laughed. I'll see you in front of the Aladdin, okay? Yeah, great. Richie hung up and looked at the phone thoughtfully. It suddenly occurred to him that Ben Hanscom was lonely, and that turn made him feel rather heroic. He was whistling as he ran upstairs to get some comics to read before the show. And that's where we're stopping. Because I clearly can't read. I passed first grade, I'm sure. I promise you. I know how to talk. Oh, shoot, I didn't put the bookmark in. I'm so dumb sometimes. It's okay because I have a little marker. And the next time, we will read about the time they went to the movies, and I think Richie gets scared again by a werewolf. I think. I'm actually not sure. But, yeah. We'll read a little bit again next time. And I will talk on TikTok about when that'll be. Maybe it'll be tomorrow night. Maybe it won't be. I haven't decided yet. But I don't think we'll do reading on Thanksgiving because it's a holiday, at least over here where I live. So have a nice Thursday that day if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving. But yeah. I hope you guys had fun. I had fun. I really like that chapter. I'm sorry that I can't read very well, but I hope you enjoyed yourself. And don't hate me too much for it. So, yeah, thanks for coming. I will see you all next time. I always end these so quickly. I'm also like, we need to get out of here. But also, I know that people are just come to hear me read. So, I will probably go live on my TikTok sometime this week as well, just to chat normally, as normal people do, not to read. So, I will see you later. Catch you on the flip side. Bye-bye.